welcome back to the Deep Dive.
It's great to be diving in again.
So today we're heading to Tokyo, specifically to, well, probably its most globally recognized district, Shibuya.
Ah, Shibuya. Yeah, instantly conjures images, doesn't it? The Scramble Crossing, Hachikō, maybe 109 if you know your fashion history. It's got that intense urban energy.
It really does. But our mission today, for you listening, is to go beyond that surface image. We want to get into the hidden layers.
Exactly. We're talking about why Shibuya is even there, the geographical quirks, the surprising ancient roots, and crucially, the massive corporate rivalries that literally built the place we see today.
We've pulled together quite a range of sources for this one. We're covering his journey from, believe it or not, a medieval warrior's territory right up to the huge 100-year redevelopment that's changing its face even as we speak.
So the goal here is, by the end of this, you'll understand why Shibuya looks and feels the way it does. Every steep hill, every skyscraper, it all has a reason rooted in history, geography, or, frankly, money.
It's the shortcut to really getting Shibuya beyond just the photos.
Definitely. You'll see the conflicts and compromises written into the landscape itself.
Okay, let's kick off with that iconic image, the Scramble Crossing. It's probably one of the most photographed intersections on Earth, just pure organized chaos.
And deservedly so. The scale is, well, immense. If you look at Shibuya Station as a whole, all the different lines coming together, the through traffic, it handles something like 3.3 million passengers every single day.
3.3 million. That's staggering. Where does that rank globally?
When you count it that way, including all the connections, it's second only to Shinjuku Station worldwide. It's a monster transport hub.
Wow. And the crossing itself, the bit everyone films.
Estimates suggest around 500,000 pedestrians cross there daily, 500,000 people. Just think about managing that flow.
It's like a human tide, perfectly timed with lights.
It really is. But, this hyper-organized, dense scene, it's actually quite new. Looking back shows just how incredibly fast Shibuya transformed.
Yeah, we found some amazing contrast material. They're these old black and white photos from, 1952, so just over 70 years ago.
And it's almost unrecognizable. In 52, Showa 27, there were no complex traffic lights at the crossing. None at all.
How did they manage traffic then?
Get this. There was just a single police officer standing on the little raised platform in the middle, waving his arms, directing cars and pedestrians. That was it.
Incredible. And the skyline, the big buildings we see now?
Nope. Didn't exist. The Q-front building, with the giant video screen, not there. The famous 109 building, definitely not there. It's much lower, much quieter. Just local shops that had none of that global commercial buzz.
So going from one police officer directing local traffic to 500,000 people a day in a global hotspot.
Yeah.
That's some transformation.
It really sets the stage, doesn't it? How did this somewhat remote, geographically tricky spot become this? And the answer really starts with the land itself, the ground beneath their feet.
That makes sense, because when you walk around Shibuya, the first thing you notice, physically, are the hills.
Yeah.
It's not flat. You're always going up or down some slope.
Exactly. And that's the fundamental difference between Shibuya and other big Tokyo centers like Shinjuku or Ikebukuro.
Right. Those feel more like they're built on a plateau or higher ground anyway.
Precisely. They're part of what's called the Yamanote, the high city. Shinjuku, for instance, sits on a sort of ridge, maybe 35 to 40 meters above sea level.
Okay, so Shinjuku is the city on a mountain ridge.
And Shibuya, by stark contrast, is a valley floor city. It's much lower, down around 15 meters elevation in its core. This valley structure, surrounded by steep slopes rising up to the plateau, dictates absolutely everything.
What carved out this valley? Why is the center of youth culture basically in a pit?
It was erosion over a very long time. Two main rivers did the work. The Shibuya River, which was also known as the Ondan River historically, and the Utagawa River.
Ah, rivers. You don't really see them much now, though.
Mostly covered up, yeah. They were culverted and built over decades ago. But their confluence point, where they met, that's exactly where Shibuya Station and the Scramble Crossing are located today. The city center sits right on top of where these rivers joined.
So the whole layout is basically dictated by ancient riverbeds.
Pretty much. And you see the impact everywhere. It explains the steep hills like Dogenzaka, which just climbs right up the valley side. It explains why so many of the side streets are narrow, winding, and almost impossible to widen. The plateau edges are just too close and too steep.
We talked about Shibuya Mark City as a perfect example of this.
Yes. It's a classic piece of Shibuya trivia. Because the building connects the low valley floor to the higher plateau level behind it, it literally has ground floor entrances on both the first floor and the fourth floor.
You walk in one side thinking it's level 1, walk through, and exit onto a street that's effectively level 4.
It's a brilliant piece of architectural problem-solving, driven entirely by that severe slope. It shows you how the terrain forces these unique solutions. Sometimes you have to go up several floors just to reach the ground on the other side.
This unique geography must have shaped its early identity, too. What about the name itself? Shibuya, where does that come from?
Well, there are two main theories, both pretty interesting. The first one, and maybe the more dramatic, links the name to a powerful medieval warrior clan. The Shibuya clan.
Ah, back to the samurai era.
Right. They were apparently quite prominent from the late Heian period into the Sengoku period. The story goes that a warrior named Kawasaki Shige, or possibly his son, did something impressive militarily, maybe captured some rebel called Shibuya Kanja in the 12th century.
Okay.
And as a reward, the Emperor Horikawa granted him the name Shibuya. This newly named Shibuya family then supposedly built Shibuya Castle right there, near where the Konohachimangu Shrine is today.
So the name could be an honor bestowed by the emperor himself, tied to military prowess. That gives the place some serious historical cachet. What's the other theory?
The less dramatic one, but maybe more geographically plausible, comes from old local records, like the Shinpen Musashi Fudoki-ko. It suggests the name might just be a corruption of Shiotani,
Shiotani.
meaning Salt Valley.
Salt Valley. A bit less glamorous than the emperor's chosen warrior.
Definitely less glamorous. But whether it was named for salt or samurai, the reality is that for centuries, Shibuya was just a minor post town on the edge of things, until, that is, the railways arrived and started to tame that tricky valley terrain. #3. From remote station to early terminal, 1885 WWII.
Right, the railways. That seems to be the turning point.
Right.
But when Shibuya Station first opened in 1885 as part of the Yamanote Line, it wasn't exactly a hit, was it?
Oh, not at all. It was basically a mistake, or at least a huge misjudgment of immediate potential. It was stuck out in the suburbs, surrounded by farmland, maybe some marshy ground near the river confluence, totally isolated.
And the ridership numbers were famously tiny.
Dismal. Some sources claim as few as 16 passengers per day initially. 16. On what would become one of the busiest lines in the world.
Hard to even imagine that level of quiet.
Yeah.
So where was the actual activity back then?
It was mostly clustered along the old Oyama Road, which ran over the hills through areas like Dogenzaka and Maruyamacho. That part developed its own character. It became known as a Hanamachi, a geisha district in the Meiji era. Entertainment, but separate from the main city.
So the hills had their own scene, away from the quiet station down in the valley. What finally woke the station up? It wasn't just the Yamanote Line.
No, the key was the arrival of private railways, turning it into a connection point. First was the Tamagawa Electric Railway, the Tamaden, in 1907. That started linking the western suburbs.
Okay.
Then the really big one. The Tokyu-Toyoko Line opened in 1927, connecting Shibuya directly to Yokohama. Huge deal. And finally, the Ginza Line subway arrived in 1938.
The Ginza Line, Tokyo's first subway line. Connecting Shibuya to that must have been a massive status boost.
Absolutely. It plugged Shibuya directly into the prestigious heart of the city. But even before the Ginza Line, there was another catalyst, a tragic one. The Great Kanto earthquake in 1923.
Ah, the earthquake that devastated downtown Tokyo, the Shinamachi areas.
Exactly. That destruction triggered a massive population shift. People fled the ruined, low-lying downtown areas and moved towards the safer, higher ground of the western suburbs, the Yamanote.
And Shibuya was positioned right at the gateway to those suburbs.
Perfectly positioned. Suddenly, all these people moving west needed to pass through Shibuya, needed to use its growing rail connections. The station's usage just exploded almost overnight.
And this boom didn't go unnoticed by a certain ambitious businessman.
Indeed. This is where Goat Keita, the famously ruthless leader of the Tokyu group, enters the picture in a big way. He saw Shibuya as the linchpin for his railway empire expanding into those growing western suburbs.
He had a vision for it.
A very specific, very successful model he borrowed from the Hankyu Railway in Osaka, the terminal department store.
Build the store right on top of the station so your passengers walk straight into your shop. Genius.
Vertical integration at its best. So in 1934, Tokyu opened the Toyoko Hayaken, the forerunner of the Tokyu department store's Toyoko branch, literally built over the station platforms.
That must have been revolutionary for Tokyo back then.
It was huge for the Kanto region, only the third terminal department store built there. The strategic goal was crystal clear. Stop those suburban shoppers from just changing trains and continuing on to establish shopping areas like Ginza or Ueno. Make them stop, shop, and spend their money right here in Toki's building in what was becoming Toki's city.
And Go Chikida's ambition didn't stop there. He tried something even bolder a few years later, in 1938.
Oh, yeah. This is a fantastic bit of forgotten corporate drama. Gachu attempted a hostile takeover of
Mitsukoshi, the really prestigious old money department store.
That's the one. Symbol of the establishment. His plan was to merge his new suburban Toyoko Haikaten into a Shibuya branch of Mitsukoshi, basically buying instant prestige and legitimacy. He even secretly bought up 100,000 shares.
That's incredibly audacious.
Okay.
How did the old guard react?
They slammed the door shut hard. Mitsukoshi was closely linked to the powerful Mitsui Bank. As soon as the takeover bid became public, Mitsui cut off all credit lines to Tokyo.
Wow.
And then the head of the rival Mitsubishi Bank piled on, also refusing any funding. They coordinated to financially strangle Tokyo.
Why such a strong reaction? Just protecting their own?
Partly, but there was also sheer disbelief and, frankly, snobbery. Our sources suggest they openly scoffed at the idea. They couldn't believe a store in a place like Shibuya, which they called Katenaka, basically the remote countryside, could ever successfully support a high-end brand like Mitsukoshi.
So they starved him of cash.
Exactly. Gocho was forced to sell his shares, abandon the merger. But crucially, this failure didn't deter him. If anything, it probably hardened Tokyo's resolve to make Shibuya succeed entirely on its own terms without the establishment's blessing. It laid the groundwork for Tokyo's absolute dominance in the area later on. #4. The rise of youth culture and the corporate wars in 1945 and 1990s.
Of course, World War II put a temporary stop to all that development. The air raids in 1945 hit Shibuya hard, right?
Yeah, the station area and the Toyoko Hayakaten were heavily damaged, run down in parts. The immediate post-war years were, well, chaotic.
Like much of Tokyo then.
For sure. The area around Shibuya Station became a real hub for black markets, illicit goods, and that instability sometimes boiled over into violence. There was a pretty serious incident in 1946, the Shibuya incident.
What happened there?
It was a clash involving local gangs, the police, and quite significantly, armed groups of Taiwanese residents. After Japan's surrender, people from Taiwan were technically citizens of the Republic of China, and there were tensions over control of the black markets. It got violent. It's a stark reminder of the power vacuums and conflicts simmering just beneath the surface during the recovery.
But even out of that chaos, some landmarks we still see today emerged.
Absolutely. Nanbei Yukocho Drunkard's Alley is a perfect example. It basically started as a collection of ramshackle food stalls that popped up along the railway tracks. Around 1950, the authorities tried to clean up and consolidate these stalls, and Nanbei Yukocho is one of the tiny pockets that survived. It's like a little time capsule of gritty, post-war authenticity right next to the modern towers.
A real piece of history. And then there was the symbolic return of Hachikō.
Right. The original statue had been melted down for the war effort, like so many metal objects. Reinstalling a new Hachikō statue in 1948 was a powerful symbol of recovery and return to some kind of normalcy.
But the big cultural shift, the moment Shibuya really became synonymous with youth culture, that happened later, didn't it? More like the 70s.
That's the crucial pivot point. Because up until the late 60s, maybe early 70s, the undisputed center for youth, for counterculture, for political expression, even for folk music, was Shinjuku.
Shinjuku had the reputation for being edgier, more radical. Hippies, the Futenzoku.
Exactly. It had that strong countercultural vibe. But then came a key event in 1969. The Shinjuku West Exit Folk Guerrilla Incident.
Sounds dramatic.
It was. Basically, large groups of young people, folk singers, activists, were gathering spontaneously in the big underground plaza at Shinjuku Station's West Exit, singing, debating, just gathering. The police decided to crack down.
And it didn't go smoothly.
Not at all. They forcibly dispersed the crowds, there were clashes, and afterwards the authorities made a legal ruling declaring that plaza was strictly a passageway, not a public square. Essentially, they made it illegal to congregate there freely anymore.
So they shut down Shinjuku as a space for spontaneous youth gathering.
Pretty much. It sent a strong signal that that kind of unstructured, potentially political gathering wasn't welcome there anymore. And this created a vacuum. Young people needed somewhere else to go, somewhere maybe less overtly political, more focused on culture and commerce.
And Shibuya was waiting in the wings, especially with the rival Seibu group making a big play.
Precisely. Entered Tsutsumi Seiji, head of the Seibu Seizan group. He was the visionary, maybe more idealistic counterpart to Tokyo's Gotikita. While Tokyo focused on transport and mass retail, Seibu Seisan, under Tsutsumi, focused on culture, lifestyle, and aspiration.
And their big move was Parco.
The opening of the flagship Shibuya Parco in 1973 was the absolute game changer. It signaled a shift in youth culture itself, moving away from the gritty counterculture of Shinjuku towards something more commercial, more focused on subculture expressed through consumption.
And this kicked off the real corporate war for Shibuya's soul between Tokyo and Seibu.
Oh yeah, it was intense. People sometimes called it the retail version of the Hakoniyama War.
Explain that reference.
The Hakoniyama War was this legendary, decades-long, often bitter rivalry between the founders of Tokyo, Gotiketa, and Seibu, Tsutsumi Seiji's powerful father and later half-brother, Yasujiro Tsutsumi, over developing resort areas, railways, and land, especially around Hakone and Karuizawa. It was a family and corporate feud. That same competitive spirit just shifted battlegrounds to Shibuya's retail and cultural landscape.
So how did their strategies differ in Shibuya itself? Tokyo already had the station locked down.
Tokyo doubled down on creating what people called the Tokyo Village. Their strategy was about density, integration, and reliable commerce. They built their big flagship department store, the Honten branch, in 1967. They opened Tokyo Hands, which was revolutionary for DIY culture, in 76. And then the iconic Shibuya 109 Tower for women's fashion in 79.
And today that whole station area is basically Tokyo, isn't it? Hikari Stream, Scramble Square.
Absolutely. It's the culmination of Gochikeda's original vision, total dominance of the core transport hub.
So what was Seibu Seisan's countermove, besides Parco?
Their approach was about creating an atmosphere and identity based on cutting-edge culture and sophisticated taste. They opened Parco in multiple parts, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, turning it into a complex. They launched Loft for stylish homewares. They established the Parco Theater, which became really influential.
And they even renamed a street.
Yes. They lobbied to rebrand the rather dull Kuyakusho Dori, Word Office Street, into Shibuya Kuindori. Gronen is park in Japanese, and Parco means park in Italian. It was all about crafting this image of a stylish, slightly European, park-like cultural zone. Their advertising campaigns, like the famous Ho Ushi Seikatsu Delicious Living series, became legendary symbols of 80s consumer culture.
So this constant push and pull between Tokyo's commercial power and Seibu's cultural branding is what gave Shibuya its unique, layered character.
Exactly. It created these two gravitational poles. The mass market, trend-driven 109 side, largely Tokyo's influence, and the more artistic, curated Parco side, driven by Seibu Seisan. That competition built the modern city.
And this competitive environment, this concentration of young people and new stores, it became a perfect incubator for street fashion, didn't it?
Absolutely. Shibuya didn't just sell fashion, it started generating it. A key moment was the rise of Shibukaji in the late 80s, early 90s.
Shibuya casual. What defined that look?
It was basically a mix, often taking elements of high-end designer brands but mixing them with classic American casual wear amikaji. Think baggy silhouettes, maybe layering expensive items with rugged jeans, baseball caps, sneakers. It was relaxed, but still fashion-conscious.
And why was Shibukaji so important historically?
Because it's widely considered Japan's first major fashion trend that genuinely bubbled up from the streets of Shibuya itself, driven purely by the kids hanging out there, and then spread nationwide. It wasn't dictated by designers in Paris or established brands in Ginza. It showed that cultural power was shifting to the youth on the street.
A real bottom-up phenomena.
Totally. And then, of course, the 90s and early 2000s became the absolute peak of gal culture, and its temple was undoubtedly Shibuya 109.
The gal, or garu, movement. 109 was ground zero.
It was the epicenter. Everything revolved around it, and a huge part of that era was the phenomenon of the charisma tenin.
Charisma shop staff.
Exactly. These weren't just salespeople. They were incredibly influential shop staff, mostly young women, who became style icons in their own right. They'd get featured in magazines like Egg or Pop Teen, and whatever they wore or recommended would instantly sell out. They dictated the trends.
They were basically the original fashion influencers before social media.
That's a perfect way to put it. They had huge followings and real power over what became popular.
And some of those specific trends that came out of 109 became massive cultural touchstones.
Oh, absolutely. Things like the super baggy loose socks, often worn bunched down around the ankles, the incredibly high Atsuzoko boots, platform boots, specific makeup styles, tan skin, hairstyles. It was a whole aesthetic.
And it wasn't just for women, right?
Yeah.
There was a male equivalent.
Yeah, the gal men fashion emerged too, adopting similar aesthetics, hairstyles, often hanging out in the same areas. It was a whole subculture complex radiating out from 109.
But like all trends, that peak dominance eventually faded, didn't it?
It did. Sometime after around 2010, things started to shift. The gal magazines began closing down, the internet made fashion information much more diffused, and other areas nearby started developing their own strong fashion identities.
Like Harajuku, Omotesando.
Exactly. Harajuku became known more for its unique, sometimes extreme street styles. Omotesando cemented itself as the home of high-end luxury brands. Daikanyama cultivated a more relaxed, sophisticated boutique vibe. Shibuya was no longer the only place setting the trends.
Is there data to back that up?
Yeah, the sales figures for Shibuya 109 reportedly peaked around 2009 and have been on a gradual decline since then. It's still important, but it doesn't hold that absolute monopoly on youth fashion it once did.
So what's the response?
Yeah.
More development?
Pretty much. It feels like the current massive redevelopment, the new Parco building that reopened in 2019, the shops in Scramble Square, the transformation of Miyashita Park. It's partly an attempt to reposition Shibuya
How so?
by attracting more high-end designer stores, international flagship shops, more sophisticated restaurants and cafes. It seems like a conscious effort to recapture its status not just as a youth hub, but as a more mature, globally recognized center for fashion and consumption, appealing to a broader, perhaps wealthier demographic. A counterattack, in a way.
Alongside fashion, Shibuya also managed to carve out another identity for itself, starting in the late 90s in the tech world, the whole Bit Valley thing.
Right, Bit Valley. That term popped up around 1999, and it was such a clever bit of wordplay.
How did it work?
Well, Shibuya literally contains the character for valley, ya or tani, and the first character, Shibu, can mean astringent or bitter. So Bitter Valley was a kind of literal, if slightly poetic, translation. They combined that geographical reality with the digital term bit, the basic unit of information.
Bitter Valley meets Bit Valley. Perfect for the dot-com boom era.
Exactly. It captured the spirit of the time, tech startups blossoming in this unique physical location, and it really took off.
Where did these companies cluster?
The area called Sakuragaoka-cho, just south of the station across the main road, became a real hotspot. Shibuya quickly became a major center for IT ventures. At one point, it ranked third in Tokyo for the number of software IT businesses, just behind the main business districts of Chiyoda and Minato.
Why Shibuya? What attracted them?
Probably a mix of factors. Its image as a creative, youthful, dynamic hub was appealing for attracting young tech talent. The existing transport links were good, and maybe initially office space was slightly cheaper than in the absolute core business districts.
But then, history kind of repeated itself, didn't it? The physical limitations of the valley started to bite again.
That's exactly right. As these tech companies grew bigger in the 2000s, they needed large, modern, efficient office buildings with big floor plates. And Shibuya, with its steep slopes, narrow streets, and lack of easily developable large plots, just couldn't provide enough of that kind of space. Rents also started climbing steeply.
So they started leaving, the leak you mentioned.
Yeah, it became a significant problem. Some of the really big names moved out. Google Japan decamped to Roppongi in 2010. Amazon Japan shifted its headquarters to Meguro in 2012.
And smaller startups, too.
Many smaller ones also found Shibuya too expensive or impractical. They started migrating to areas like Gotanda, which became known as Gotanda Valley, offering cheaper rents and more suitable office space. Shibuya was genuinely at risk of losing its hard-won Bit Valley crown.
The valley strikes back. The same geography that challenged Go Chikeda in the 30s was now pushing out the tech giants. So who came to the rescue? Tokyo again.
Primarily, yes. Toki Group, along with partners, spearheaded the massive counteroffensive, the 100-year redevelopment plan. This time, they knew exactly what the problem was, a lack of large-scale, high-quality office supply.
So the goal is specifically to build spaces tech companies needed.
Explicitly. The entire redevelopment was engineered to overcome the valley's physical constraints by building up, creating huge amounts of brand new, high-specification office space designed precisely to lure those big tech tenants back and keep the next generation of startups from leaving. It was a multi-billion-dollar bet on solving the geography problem.
And did it work? Did they come back?
It seems to have been remarkably successful so far. DNA, a major mobile gaming and tech company, moved into the Shibuya Hikari Tower when it opened in 2012. Google Japan returned to Shibuya in 2019, taking massive space in the new Shibuya Stream building.
Google came back. That's a huge win.
a massive validation of the strategy. Mixi, another significant Japanese tech and social media company, consolidated its offices into the Shibuya Scramble Square Tower. And Tokyo didn't just build buildings, they also launched initiatives like the TAP, the Tokyo Accelerate program, to actively nurture and support startups, positioning themselves as the crucial landlord and facilitator for the digital economy in Shibuya.
Let's talk about the sheer scale of this 100-year redevelopment. It's supposed to wrap up around 2027. Building these enormous skyscrapers in that valley must have been incredibly complex.
A monumental feat of engineering. Remember, the core of Shibuya sits right on a confluence of those old rivers. So flood risk is a major historical issue, and the ground itself, being eroded valley floor and a reclaimed riverbed in places, isn't ideal for massive structures.
How do they manage that?
A huge part of the project involved complex civil engineering works below ground. Managing the Shibuya River, which still flows underneath many of these new buildings, Shibuya Stream literally sits right on top of its channel, required extensive reinforcement, new culverting, and water management systems. They essentially had to rebuild and stabilize the valley floor before they could go vertical.
So they're building on engineered ground, basically. And the towers themselves are huge.
Absolutely massive. Shibuya Scramble Square's East Tower, the tallest one, is 46 stories, 230 meters high. That opened in 2019. The Central and West Towers are still coming, due around 2027. Shibuya Stream is 33 stories, 180 meters, and the newest addition, Shibuya Sakura Stage, which opened in 2023, has two main towers, one 39 stories, 180 meters, and another 29 stories, 133 meters. The strategy is clear. If you can't expand outwards, go upwards. Maximize that footprint.
But this huge corporate-driven transformation hasn't been without criticism, has it? Concerns about gentrification, displacement.
No, it's definitely drawn critique. That's almost always the case with redevelopment on this scale. While it undeniably solved the office space problem for the tech industry and significantly upgraded the station's incredibly complex infrastructure, like finally moving the inconvenient Saikyo line platforms much closer to the Yamano line in 2020, which was a huge improvement for commuters.
Right, that used to be such a long walk.
Exactly. So definite improvements, but there's a social cost. The redevelopment of Miyashita Park is a frequently cited example. It used to be a more traditional public park where homeless people often found shelter. The transformation into a trendy commercial complex with a rooftop park involved significant controversy over the exclusion and displacement of those vulnerable populations.
There's also just a general feeling, you hear it sometimes, that the new Shibuya, with its gleaming towers and high-end shops, is maybe losing some of its soul. That gritty, accessible, slightly chaotic energy that made it famous.
Yes, that sentiment is definitely out there and reflected in some of our sources. The idea that Shibuya might be shifting from being primarily a city of youth to becoming more of a city for middle-aged and older people, or perhaps a city polished and tailored mainly for international tourists and well-paid creative workers. It raises questions about who the new Shibuya is really for. #7. Hidden gems and quirky place names.
What's still amazing, though, is that despite all this huge top-down redevelopment in the center, Shibuya somehow manages to retain this incredible diversity. It's not just one monolithic block. You step just a street or two away from the main drag, and the atmosphere can change completely.
Totally. The patchwork nature is still there. Just look at the contrast between, say, Maruyama-cho and Haikendana and the area right next door, Shuchu.
Maruyama-cho, we mentioned, that was the old geisha district.
Right. And today, it's still this dense, slightly labyrinthine area packed with love hotels, small bars, live music venues. It has a very specific, intense nightlife energy, but literally bordering it is Shuchu.
And Shuchu.
Probably one of the quietest, most exclusive, and frankly, most expensive low-rise residential neighborhoods in all of central Tokyo. Big houses, walls, very serene. You cross one street and the entire vibe shifts from nocturnal intensity to daytime tranquility. It's jarring.
And then there's the area people now call Okushibu.
Okushibuya, meaning deep Shibuya or inner Shibuya. This is kind of the cool, slightly more grown-up counterpoint to the main station area. It refers to the neighborhoods just northwest of the station parts of Shuchu, Tomigaya, Kamiyamachu.
What's the feel there?
It's much more low-key, lots of independent boutiques, really good cafes, artisan bakeries, unique little restaurants tucked away on residential streets alongside offices. It's trendy, but in a deliberately quieter, more curated way. It's where people go to escape the main Shibuya scramble. It represents a different kind of Shibuya cool.
The history of corporate branding is also literally written on the street signs there, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's embedded in the place names. We talked about Shibuya Kundori, Park Street, how Saibu pushed for that name change to align with Parko.
Right.
Then you have famous slopes like Zaka, Spain Slope, supposedly named because someone thought its narrow, bustling atmosphere felt a bit Spanish. And Bunkamori Dori, which used to be called Tokyu Honten Dori after the department store, was renamed to emphasize the Bunkamori Arts Complex nearby, projecting a more cultural image.
And even though the official addressing system changed back in the 60s and wiped out a lot of old neighborhood names,
some of them survive in other ways. Old names like Albachu, Mitakechu, Miyashitachu might be gone from the official maps, but they live on in place names like Miyashita Park or Mitake Park. It's a way the history lingers.
Finally, we have to touch on Shibuya's weirdly prominent role in pop culture, specifically as the place that always seems to get destroyed in movies and anime.
It's almost a trope, isn't it? If you want to show Japan is under attack or facing catastrophe, you destroy the Shibuya Scramble Crossing. It's the ultimate visual shorthand for modern Japanese urbanism in crisis.
The list of examples is pretty long.
Oh, yeah. It got trashed by giant monsters way back in Mothra in 1961. It was famously incinerated by Gauss in Gamera 3 in 1999. Godzilla's wrecked it multiple times, flooded it, smashed it. It got hit by a tsunami in the film Japan Sinks. Destroyed by psychic powers and chaos. Head.
It's not just destruction either. Sometimes it's transformation.
Right. Like in the anime revisions, the whole central district gets mysteriously transported 300 years into the future. Or even in video games, wasn't it turned into a dirt racetrack and a Colin McRae rally game?
I think it was. Dirt 2.
See? It shows that Shibuya isn't just seen as a place, but as this potent, flexible symbol of modernity, constantly being reimagined, challenged, or, well, blown up.
So we've covered a lot of ground. We've gone from Shibuya being this overlooked valley, a station serving barely anyone, through intense corporate battles that literally shaped its hills and streets, through massive cultural shifts from geishas to gals to tech,
to become this hyper-developed, globally recognized center for commerce, IT, and culture it is today. It really is a story of ambition constantly fighting against and reshaping a challenging piece of geography.
And hopefully the key thing for you listening is seeing how everything in Shibuya is connected.
Yeah.
The reason 109 is where it is, the reason Parko fostered a different vibe, the reason Google came back, it's all tied to that history of competition, culture, and overcoming the physical constraints of the valley. It wasn't accidental.
It was engineered.
Yeah.
By corporate rivalry, by cultural trends, by the sheer force of development trying to maximize value out of that unique basin.
But we also touched on that current paradox.
Yeah.
The massive 100-year redevelopment has definitely solved some big problems, especially for the tech sector's need for space. But there's that lingering question about whether it's smoothing out the edges too much, losing that chaotic, youthful energy it was famous for.
Which leads us to our final thought for you to ponder. Shibuya's entire history seems defined by radical reinvention. It reinvents itself after earthquakes, after wars, after losing its cultural crown to Shinjuku, after the tech exodus. It always adapts, often violently.
So the question is,
given the current criticisms of the redevelopment that it might be too focused on high-end global commerce, on tourists, on established businesses, what's the next disruption? What unforeseen cultural force may be bubbling up from indie areas like Okashibu, or maybe some new digital wave we can't even imagine yet, will inevitably challenge this current iteration and force Shibuya into its next unpredictable metamorphosis? Will it stay on this path, or will the pendulum swing back again?
It's impossible to say for sure, but based on its history, standing still doesn't seem to be in Shibuya's DNA. It'll keep changing, keep challenging.
Always evolving.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Shibuya.
See you next time.